a lot of criticism continues to come out about Obama and the West strategy against Islamic State. Are they doing enough?
Well, I think there are a couple of ways I'd answer that question. We just heard President Rouhani talking from the Iranian perspective. All the countries in the region are united by one thing, and that is their common fear of ISIS spreading. So in a geopolitical sense, that's a positive. However, one of the other features of this whole situation is that fighters are coming from these countries to participate in ISIS as well. So the Saudis and the Turks also have to balance against domestic public opinion, as does Iran. I call this a sort of a frenemies phenomenon in foreign policy, whereby interests are aligned, but in terms of fighting ISIS, but in terms of the regional dynamics, they still have to speak to their domestic constituencies, right? And then in terms of, is the U.S. doing enough? Well, I've been talking about vox populi risk for a long time now. U.S. public opinion has been strongly against going back into military conflict. President Obama came to power, of course, on the back of that as well. What we saw was U.S. public opinion swing 20 points following the executions of the two hostages at the hands of ISIS. So that has really crystallized public opinion in a new way, but not to the extent of allowing the president to put boots on the ground.
You know, in that interview with Ann Curry, Tina, Rouhani did express a certain level of optimism when it comes to Iran's relations with the United States, saying together they can resolve many problems. Do you think there's truth to that?
Well, that's one of the curious developments and important developments, frankly, of the changes in the Middle East, right? After 31 years of no contact between the U.S. and Iran, we have a diplomatic process that's moving forward in the form of this interim agreement. And as discussed, it's a perfect illustration of the frenemies idea, where Iran and the U.S. actually have a lot in common in terms of interests being aligned. However, it's still very sensitive for both sides to actually openly admit to it.
I want to rewind the clock a little bit. I mean, how is it possible that Islamic State has had such a significant rise over the last year or so? And you consider the money spent not just by the US and the British and the Europeans, but also other Middle Eastern states on fighting, extremism. How is it possible that they've risen so strongly over the last year?
Well, we used to talk about the risks posed by failed states or weak and fragile states, and I think one of the answers to your question is the ongoing civil war in Syria. It allowed a security vacuum to develop and a non-state actor, in this case in the form of ISIS, to take advantage of it. Assad has been saying for years that he's been fighting terrorists, and it wasn't until they came over the border into Iraq that the extent to which he was doing so is really evident.